With Bruce Wolf in for Dan this morning on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by the Alpha Wealth Group, bringing the trilogy of estate, tax, and investment planning together. Visit alphawealthgroup.com for a free report.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Work it out. Good morning. Good Friday morning. Amy Jacobson here. Dan Proft is off after a spectacular performance yesterday at our company scramble in Bolingbrook.
I did not know that.
So thank you for coming in, Bruce Wolf. It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure is mine.
Last night, big news out of Washington was that the congressional baseball game was played. Sans, of course, Congressman Steve Scalise, excuse me. I always want to say Scalia. I know,
sure.
But Congressman Scalise, and they had a touching moment where everybody met at second base before the game began to say a prayer and to be thankful that no one passed away from this horrific ambush that took place earlier in the week. And I turned on Fox News, and there he was, the one and only Ed Henry, broadcasting live from there. Peter Doocy was also at the ballpark. And he did a fantastic job. And with that, we'd like to welcome to the show Ed Henry, Chief National Correspondent for Fox News Channel and the author of the book 42 Faith about Jackie Robinson. Good morning, Mr. Henry. How are you?
Good morning. Good to talk to Amy and Bruce. How are you?
Good. So
Great.
what did you take away from yesterday's game? I know the whole theme was unity and peace in politics. Yeah. And, that grosses out a majority of our listeners. I personally love it. And I hope it lasts forever. What do you think?
Well, I'm laughing because you're right. I think there's skepticism out there. It's a serious moment, obviously, because Steve Scalise was wounded very badly. I mean, I think the initial reports were he got hit in the hip, so it wasn't in the chest or the head, and so he's going to be just fine. He's now had 3 operations, and from what we've been hearing from lawmakers who have visited the Republican whip in the hospital, it's very touch and go. His injuries were quite extensive, internal bleeding, bones ripped up. So, look, I think it was wonderful that people are coming together, that they're using this as a moment of unity. But when you say that your listeners kind of might roll their eyes about that, frankly, I don't blame them, because I've been covering politics in Washington for a long time, first on the Hill and then the White House, filling in for Tucker Carlson last night. I've seen this play out before. You know, something horrific happens. Democrats and Republicans say, gosh darn it, we're going to work together. You know, they had a wonderful moment last night where they all said a prayer together. They knelt in prayer for a moment or two out at second base, which was the position, obviously, that Steve Scalise was playing when he was shot. Look, I'm not going to, laugh that off. That's wonderful. It was terrific that they came together. But I feel like in a few days we're going to hear the same old rhetoric that we've been hearing for a long time. And when I hear Democratic leaders like Chuck Schumer coming out and saying, we should come together, Chuck Schumer hasn't done anything to help this president, one iota, from day one of the administration. I think it's a fair question to see what has President Trump done to reach out to Democrats. I think both sides, there's plenty of blame to go around. But I'm just very skeptical that this goodwill is going to last very long.
Ed, so last night I'm tuning into Fox for my daily dose of the sweet smarminess of Tucker Carlson, and I love him, but and then I see you there, Ed. No, and it was great. You've written this book 42 Faith about Jackie Robinson, and so it must be especially resonant to you because the whole thing. I mean, it's horrible about Scalise. When I kept seeing these reports, and Peter Doocy and others were giving reports talking about the gunman being on the third base side. And to me...
Well, he was shooting over the third base dugout.
No, I get it. What I'm saying is that the juxtaposition of third base side and gunmen and bullets, it's like it tears you apart because, it's baseball. We just got through in Chicago with, the Cubs winning the World Series for the first time in 108 years. And it's, all this wonderful sentiment. And to have baseball sully that way, the national pastime, it's like... our whole fabric is being ripped apart by that, and it must be resonant with you. You wrote this book about Jackie Robinson.
When I first came out with the book 42 Faith, a lot of people, when I did interviews like this, were like, wait, you cover politics. What in the world are you writing about baseball? Well, first of all, I want to write about something I'm passionate about, and I love baseball. My dad, with Father's Day coming up, baseball is a game that fathers pass on to sons. We still go to games together. But also, faith in God and baseball really helped Jackie Robinson and Branch Rickey a black man and a white man come together at a time in this country when people were not coming together, across the races. And so I do think you're absolutely right that baseball is one of those things, is the national pastime, that brings people together. It's awful and sick that this man decided to choose a baseball field, to basically try to assassinate not just Steve Scalise, but more than a dozen, maybe 2 dozen Republican members of Congress. I mean, remember, this man was in the parking lot, asked one of the lawmakers as they were leaving early to get to work, are those Democrats or Republicans? He said Republicans. Oh, okay. And then goes down and starts shooting.
Yeah, and then the fact that he was living in his van there for a few months, just scoping, casing the joint out, is so bothersome. And his wife yesterday came forward and thought that he was going to Washington to, lobby for tax reform.
Yeah, well, and, the Washington Post posted a story, I think, yesterday, and I see a lot of social media reaction to it saying, this was not an attack on lawmakers. This was an attack on all of us.
No.
Well, we could take it that way, I guess. But on the other hand, this was a gunman who was targeting Republicans specifically. He was posting things on Facebook about how he loved Bernie Sanders and how he really nasty anti-Trump stuff. So I think there are a lot of people in the mainstream media who want to kind of gloss over that. I'm not saying that people on the left inspired this. I think it was sick that after the Democratic Congresswoman Gabby Giffords was shot in 2011, you remember the New York Times, in fact, just did an editorial a day or so ago and had to correct it because they revived this false narrative that it was Sarah Palin that inspired the shooter in 2011. Let's just stop blaming everyone. And as you said at the top of the broadcast, let's figure out a way to come together where we can.
Okay, but as you just said just now, they're going to come together for about 2 seconds. And one of the reasons, Ed, is because this is not limited to the rhetoric of the left. This is in part due to their actions. Middlebury with Charles Murray, Berkeley, and the leaders of the Democratic Party condone this. They take a benign view at best about a lot of this violence, and where's the outrage? It doesn't really exist.
Look what happened when just Ann Coulter was going to speak at Berkeley, and they basically had to stop it because there were threats of violence. The idea that conservatives can't even speak on campus. It's not that you have to support their views or you have to go lockstep with Donald Trump. But on campuses in America right now, many of them, not all, but many of them, they won't even let conservatives speak. They're drowned out. And then, as you say, at Berkeley, there's actually violence. Where was Nancy Pelosi? Where was Chuck Schumer? Did you see a press release? Because I didn't, denouncing the violence. And I just think enough is enough, and it's time that leaders speak up. In fact, a few moments ago, I was watching the CBS This Morning program, and they had Elizabeth Warren on from the left. And Charlie Rose was asking her, what do you think about all this? And she said, well, it's time to come together. Okay. And as you say, that can be empty rhetoric. So, unity. And so Charlie Rose asked a great question. He said, well, what are you specifically going to do to bring people together? She started talking about the middle class and this and that. Okay, fine. Middle class is great. But what specifically will you do? Look at Elizabeth Warren's record. Name one time that she's come to work across the aisle with Republicans. Instead, she's just rhetorically going after Donald Trump every single day.
Oh no! One time out of every 32 times, Elizabeth Warren crosses.
Well,
that's how much she's American Indian.
When President Trump and Melania visited, Steve Scalise in the hospital, Anderson Cooper was watching him, and he said that they got into the hospital, but they never saw him. And that's just, even when he's trying to do the right thing and be not only a decent president but a decent man, and they still attack him. Because he was there. Right. He did spend 30 minutes at his bedside talking to Scalise's wife and being there. And they lied about that.
Probably medicated. So, Steve Scalise couldn't interact.
No.
Doing an
but they were with his wife.
And you're right. It's sort of like these kind of details that don't really matter at the end of the day. You're right. The point is the President of the United States on his birthday says to his family, let's go over to the hospital. Let's go boost the spirits of Steve Scalise's wife who had to fly in from Louisiana. They have 2 very small children. And I was told by a Republican lawmaker that the kids were coming in with mom to cheer dad on at the baseball game last night. Because as you said, he plays second base. Instead, these very small children had to be told, Daddy's not going to play in the game. And yet people are attacking somehow. Well, why? Donald Trump didn't actually see him. This is just trivia. It's nonsense. And this is, people don't want to focus on the big issues of the day, and they don't want to come
And-
together. They
But
just-
sometimes President Trump is his own worst
Well,
enemy.
and
I mean,
I-
because of the tweets that he was
And
tweeting out
I
yesterday.
heard that
He has
Trump
some
took.
leadership too, you're right.
I heard that Trump took in the next room over. He took the ice cream dessert from a patient at
He
because
wanted
we used
two
to.
scoops.
That
He
was
wanted
the
two
third
scoops.
report. He took 2 scoops ice cream.
So, Ed Henry, quickly before we let you get on with your busy day, I wanted to ask you about Trump's tweet. I mean, after the news came out full blown yesterday about obstruction of justice investigation that he's now, that's now the focus, that he's being investigated by the special prosecutor. He starts tweeting out about something, why is it Hillary Clinton's family and Dems dealing with Russia are not looked at, but my non-dealings are? And then went on to talk about, the phones that were destroyed by hammers and bleached emails. What's
Yeah.
going on there?
Here's what I think. I want to make a separation because I just keep hearing people, you mentioned Anderson Cooper, various people, almost every night there's a segment that they do that says, why is the president tweeting? National crisis. I want to separate out. The president is perfectly entitled to tweet. He's perfectly entitled to use social media. I use it. You may use it. Your program. That's all fine. But I think you're pointing to something more important, which we should focus on, the substance of the tweets. Should the president of the United States keep going backwards and saying, what about Hillary Clinton? That's in the rearview mirror, Mr. President. I don't want to let him off the hook. I was just calling out Elizabeth Warren and others on the left. I'm a fair and balanced reporter. Mr. President, you have to also turn the page. Because, frankly, when you have liberal legal scholars like Alan Dershowitz saying there's really not an obstruction of justice case here for firing James Comey, I think Donald Trump, there's not really obstruction of justice here over the firing. What might be getting him in trouble is the phone calls to other people to try to push the envelope, the tweets that are saying, well, it's all about Russia. My point being, he's digging a deeper hole, and I kind of think he may be able to get the whole Russia thing behind him if he stops talking about it, if he stops tweeting about it.
Ed, we have to interrupt because we have to go, but I got to tell you, you're not a fair and balanced reporter anymore. Fox just jettisoned that moniker.
Yeah,